Okay, we are live, guys. Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday, June 25th, 2025 regular meeting of the Seaside Planning Commission. Let's start by calling the meeting to order and doing a roll call.
Commissioner Alcaraz,
Here.
Commissioner Wynn, Commissioner Evans,
Present.
Commissioner LaMica,
Present.
Commissioner Owens,
Present.
Commissioner Dodson,
Present.
Chair Silva.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. So in reviewing the agenda, have any items arisen in the last or after the 72-hour posting deadline that we would need to take any action to add? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Public comment. Any members in the public wishing to comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda may do so at this time. Please come to the podium and we'll give you 3 minutes to address them. Seeing nobody in the auditorium, we don't have anybody at the podium, but do we have anybody online who raised their hand? No? Okay, moving on to the approval of the minutes from May 28th, 2025. Do you have any comments, input, anything, Joan? You weren't here, so. All right, I'm gonna make a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from May 28th, 2025.
Okay, do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
And we have abstention from Commissioner. Oh, we have two, sorry. Is that noted? Thank you very much. All right. Business items. First item of business 6A is use permit application number UP 2025-004 Christine Winge of Meals on Wheels of Monterey Peninsula applicant and the Taylor and Carrie Loish Revocable Trust property owner are requesting use permit approval for the operation of a community center and for a reduction to required parking at 1020 Auto Center Parkway in the Regional Commercial Zoning District. All right, staff have a presentation for us. Let's go.
Well, actually, so this item has been continued to July 9th.
Okay, item has been continued. We will move on to zoning ordinance amendment ZOA 2025-001, a resolution recommending approval of an amendment to the Seaside Municipal Code to create a new classification for the sales of firearms and ammunitions, identify zoning districts and locations where this use would be allowed, and to establish operating standards for the use. The proposed action consists of a recommendation only and is therefore not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to section 156(1)(b)(3) of the sequel guidelines. All right, staff, this is your presentation.
Yes, it is. Okay. And so just a little bit of background here. So on March 20th, council directed staff to review appropriate locations for the sales of firearms and ammunition within the city of Seaside. On May 1st, the council approved a resolution that you guys saw back in April to amend the West Broadway Urban Village specific plan to prohibit the sales of firearms and ammunition within that area. And the ordinance that's coming before you today would essentially provide the regulations for the remainder of the city. So this is everything but West Broadway Urban Village. What's a little bit different about this is that the ordinance covers two different areas, and that's in Title V as well as in Title 17. Title 17 being the zoning ordinance. Officially, the Planning Commission's review is limited to Title 17. And so the resolution that you have in front of you provides a recommendation regarding Title 17. That being said, unofficially, there's no reason that you guys cannot provide feedback regarding the entirety of the ordinance. So there is a resolution which addresses Title 17, but if there's anything in Title 5 that you guys want to suggest or bring up or ask questions about, please feel free to do that as well. It's both fair game. So the ordinance would, first of all, amend Title V. And this really, right now, Title V has a requirement that anyone who wants to sell or store firearms in the city of Seaside must comply with federal, state laws, and obtain a permit from the chief of police. And it doesn't really say what the chief of police is looking at in terms of evaluating or granting these permits. And so what this would do is this would really expand and provide some concrete requirements so that the chief of police has the ability to see whether or not they actually comply. And those requirements include installation of physical security devices, such as requirements for bars on windows, bollards in front of a store to prevent a vehicle from ramming it. And this is primarily because of all the potential impacts from this business, the worst one is that the firearms are stolen and then sold on the black market. And so the number one thing we're looking at preventing is that exact scenario. And unfortunately, the only way to do that is to physically harden the sites. And so there could be some other ways of getting in. I took this to the Public Safety Committee last week, and one of the things they pointed out was that someone could come in through the wall of an adjacent building. And I was talking to somebody from another city the other day, and they said they just had a theft where they came in through the roof. So there's enough different ways. This ordinance does include language that gives the police chief some flexibility in terms of requiring hardening of the physical components of the building in conjunction with the chief building official. And so while there's not specific details as to how solid a wall must be or what you have to do to a roof, I'm not really sure what that would even do or be, but the police chief does have the authority to make those determinations upon inspecting the building. There's also requirements relating to the display or storage of the firearms, such as requiring that they be stored in a safe or vault. When they're out on the floor, there needs to be either stored in the safe, or there needs to be a cable that runs through them, through the part with the trigger. Yeah, the little thingamadoohickey. Yeah, trigger guard. Thank you. The trigger guards with 1/4-inch cables, no more than 5 firearms per cable, as well as alarm and video monitoring of the facilities. And there would be annual inspections required by the police chief. So this would be an annual license, not a permit. It's a license that they would get on an annual basis from the police chief. And all of that is in Title V. And it really is, that is a whole area where the police chief has purview and would be the one evaluating. So that wouldn't fall to the planning office to review those kinds of items. There's also the actual zoning ordinance amendment. So these are the changes to Title 17, which look more at where are these going to be located and what does the approval process look like for these kinds of businesses. So in a nutshell, we're going to be limiting locations to the southwest portion of the city. It would only be allowed with a use permit in the CC, CRG, and CH zoning districts. And it would require minimum distances from certain sensitive uses. So looking at allowable locations, sales would only be allowed west of Noche Buena and south of San Pablo. So basically all of the red area up on the map there, it would be prohibited. And there's 2 reasons for that. The first reason is that there are some CC zoned parcels on the east side of Noche Buena, but those are residential areas and staff doesn't believe that those are really appropriate locations for this kind of a use. And the second is to put the businesses within a relatively close proximity to the police station so that in the event of a break-in, it's more likely the police will be able to respond in time. Getting close to that ramp on Fremont at Highway 1 increases the odds that someone would be able to flee and get on the freeway before the police are able to respond quickly. So that is the rationale behind having it in this quadrant of the city. This is where the CC district is located. And so again, this is looking at always a use permit. So this would never be a permitted use, and it would be allowed in CC, CRG, and CH. So CC is the community commercial district. You can see it's mainly Fremont, with the exception of the area around the intersection with Broadway and Fremont. And the reason for that is that that area is zoned for commercial mixed use. And staff's not recommending that it be allowed there for the same reasons that we don't feel that it should be allowed in the West Broadway Urban Village. Those are meant to be a kind of a mixture of commercial residential type uses in single buildings, and that's just not, we believe that it should be in a separate commercial space. The CRG district is regional commercial. Within the area that it would be allowed in, it mainly consists of the area around the Embassy Suites, the Home Depot area, as well as a few parcels around Round Table up on Fremont. And the heavy commercial district is also not a very common district within the area. There's a few parcels up where Granite Rock is on Del Monte, as well as some parcels behind Home Depot on Roberts. So you take all these, you put them together. This is what the map looks like as far as where this would be allowed. This doesn't factor in sensitive uses such as parks, schools, rec facilities, or daycares. It doesn't factor in potential general plan inconsistencies. So one of the findings of a use permit is that it must be consistent with the general plan. So some of the parcels here likely would not be consistent because the general plan would have rezoned the land use. And unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to do that full analysis yet. But if a parcel was zoned for, say, CC, but the general plan said CMX, then we wouldn't be able to make the general plan consistency finding in that scenario. It also doesn't factor in coastal zone requirements, which may take out a few of the parcels around Del Monte and Canyon Del Rey, but would not affect most of the parcels in here. One of the things that came up during the last council meeting was the radius, and there was some debate over how far of a distance should there be from sensitive uses to the shops. And so what I've got here, so first of all, this ordinance includes a recommendation of 300 feet. The reason being that staff feels that it provides a decent buffer and also happens to coincide with our notification requirements. But I'll show you some slides that give examples of what it looks like to have different radiuses. So this is a 200-foot radius around Oldemeyer Center and Trinity Park. And so you can see that with 200 foot, at the Oldemeyer Center, it doesn't really even reach any of the parcels that are nearby on Fremont. With Trinity Park, it just grabs like one or two parcels over there. So it is a very, very small radius. When you go to 300 feet, you can see it starts getting a little bit larger. We're grabbing a few more parcels on Fremont near Trinity Park, also grabbing several parcels over on Fremont near Oldemeyer. And this is the recommended radius. Going to 500 feet, you can see we're starting to take more parcels off Fremont. It's several blocks are now removed. And that we're trying not to limit the number of spaces too much. And one of these parcels actually used to have a gun shop in it, near where Carl's Jr. is now. So that with a 500-foot radius, that parcel would be excluded. And then a 1,000-foot radius really just makes it nearly impossible, because as you can see, the excluded parcels work almost all the way up to where you start getting into a CMX district. So you really would be looking at just that small area of parcels on Fremont north of Broadway that we were looking at earlier. But most of those parcels south of Broadway would not be a possibility. So it's just kind of that one little area. And staff is recommending that we have more flexibility than that, especially because some of these parcels are the closest ones. So staff's recommendation is that the commission provide feedback and adopt the attached resolution recommending approval of the zoning ordinance amendment. And I forgot to mention, so one of the things that came up at the Public Safety Committee was whether or not we should be regulating firearms components as a part of this. And I have not yet had an opportunity to speak with the police chief about that, to get his take on this and whether that should be included. And so I'd be looking for a little bit of flexibility in the recommendation that if appropriate, that basically I'd like to know if it's okay with you either way, whether it includes or doesn't include components of firearms. And if you do have a preference, which one is it? So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions from the commission.
So I just have real quickly before everybody else, is there any active interest from businesses that might want to sell firearms?
We have no
Okay,
applications.
so we're not pressed on this. It's just something that we're doing proactively.
Correct, yeah, the council, this came up because of an incident in Monterey where a firearms store moved into a mixed-use building and the residents in the area were very concerned about it. And so that kind of brought it to the attention of, the nearby cities. And council asked like, well, what does this look like for us? And currently, we treat firearm sales like any other retail. It's just general retail. It's like shoes or books. And council was pretty clear that they didn't think that that was appropriate. And so based on that direction, we're putting an ordinance together to, provide something that's a bit more restrictive.
All right, thank you for that. All right, questions? We can start down at your end and okay.
Correct.
Couple things. Where was the old outdoor world in Seaside?
From what if it's the one that I'm thinking of, I think it was the one that was by
Right
Carl's
next to Carl's.
Jr. Yeah.
Cause that they sold.
Yeah, that's what he was mentioning.
Okay. Second, you mentioned cabling that would fasten guns. The only thing that I'd like to see is that you make that cabling stainless. It's harder to cut. So if they rush in with bolt cutters after they've rammed the building, they can't, it's not an easy thing to just cut. So.
And it should be electrified.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
But it just seems if it's harder to get through with a pair of bolt cutters, gives the police more time to get there.
So this says the current language is for hardened steel, rod or cable. I will look and see if stainless steel is stronger than, or I don't know if hardened steel is, I don't know enough about what that means, but I'll look into the stainless steel thing.
Gotta learn new vocabulary.
Yeah.
Guards and-
Yeah.
Commissioner Dodson, any question?
Just a couple of questions for me, because I'm not a gunner. When you say component, I think you said components, is that like scopes and ammunition, or what does that mean?
When I picture it, I'm picturing like selling the barrel, the trigger guard, all the various parts of it. So if, someone takes the gun apart and sells all the different components, is that the same thing or is that a different thing? And this starts getting, because the DOJ also plays a role in enforcement of this. So I don't know how the sale of the components interacts with their rules. So that's why I want to talk to the police chief about it to try to get some more information, because I just don't know.
I think that's wise.
Is that the idea to avoid ghost guns, basically?
That's the idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I would recommend that chief be question on that, because if I trying to fix, that FFL, federal firearm license to fix weapons. You have to fix a part to obtain the part to fix it. And that's the question you just brought up, is that is he authorized to, purchase that part to fix the weapon? Yeah, to the fair. One of the biggest problems I see with these gun shows throughout different areas throughout the states is the parts, where they get this part here, that part there, that part here, and then they put them together. If
you're a gun guy, you know that we have a gun shop in Marina, right off of Rhine-Dollar. It's a police officer that runs it. But when you need a part, he orders it to fix your gun. It doesn't make it a different gun. And to me, that's what we really need to watch, is that somebody, especially with these 3D printers and everything nowadays, they can build a gun that doesn't even show up.
I think there are also some parts that are benign and other parts that are part of the mechanism that causes a gun to fire, or, and I would imagine if somebody wants, to put different handle grips on a gun, that's different than if they're modifying the barrel and the trigger mechanism and things like that. So those are good questions, but I think, the police chief should be involved in that.
That, and it should be an authorized gun repair shop that gets those and puts it together. To me, we don't just sell those parts to the public. If you buy something from out of state, it goes to a gun shop and then you pick it up from there, once everything's passed. And so I just see the parts as going to a gun shop, just like the gunsmith that they have one in Marina, but hopefully we'll get one here. And it's a better eye on what's being built.
But I think that's a distinction between components and what you were asking, which is more accessories. Somebody wants to buy a holster, somebody wants to buy a sight, somebody wants to buy, those are benign parts in and of themselves. So I think that.
Yeah, and to mention, you brought up the repair of guns, and so this ordinance the Title V changes would apply to the repair of firearms, but the Title 17 changes would not, because this is relating to the sales of firearms, right? So a gun repair wouldn't have to get a use permit per se, but they would have to comply with the security measures for, keeping someone from breaking in and stealing the weapons.
Although, for example, on Rhine-Dollar, the blacksmith there that does, or the gunsmith there, sorry, that does the repairs, he also sells firearms. So I would imagine that a business model wouldn't work unless you do a little bit of both, because a lot of times when you repair firearms, you also end up, repurposing them or recycling them or selling used firearms or new firearms, along with the ammunition, which was the other thing that is regulated by this. So I think it would be, I can't imagine somebody investing in a storefront to repair only and not have the other component to their business.
Yeah, it's just the question I had, because I know several all guys who fix them out of their home.
Sure.
But that's in the county, it's not in the city, so they are going to be county.
So I still had.
Yes, the other question.
No, that's fine. This was great discussion. Andrew, I just kind of just spitballing here to understand the thought process rather than, I'm sorry, where was the cutoff, the north cutoff?
San Pablo.
San Pablo. Rather than that, which, I'm sure there's a very good reason. I'm just curious what it was. Because when I look at the maps, if we make it Broadway, which is a whole lot closer to the police department, and going to be quicker response time, we don't lose that many potential locations. But just wondering, like I look at the CRG and, there's only like 3 or 4 locations above or north of Broadway. Same thing with the CH. Just curious, was it just because most of those locations north of Broadway are probably more desirable from a retail standpoint, or is you just wanted to put as much territory as possible in the code?
I sat down with the police chief and a map and asked, where would be the appropriate place to draw the line, and San Pablo was what they said. So I deferred to their expertise on it.
Well, you also mentioned too that access to the freeway was a concern.
Right. So, and his question is like, well, why not LaSalle or some other road? How did you end up with San Pablo? And it seems, in the opinion of the police chief, that was the right spot. So that was where that came from.
So you got any other questions? Anybody? Okay. Let us open this to public comment. Seeing that there's nobody here in the auditorium, there's no comment here. Do we have anyone online who might be interested in raising their hand and commenting? Okay. All right, we'll close our public comment period then, bring it back to this body. So what you're asking from us is a resolution, or sorry, a recommendation, because this goes to council. Well, it's a resolution recommending approval of the amendment based upon the language you guys have prepared, which is what you presented to us. It's the 300 feet and the areas particularly mentioned. So I guess for our discussion is, do we have any amendments like LaSalle or something, or do we think that the staff has adequately done this? Or does anybody have an objection overall?
I feel that this has been vetted by the police department, and that's, I think, the most important agency to look at this and decide what's a good place and what's a bad place. So I am not of the mind that we should be tinkering with it on the edges unless we have a solid reason to do so, and I haven't heard one tonight.
I love the fact that you went to the Public Safety Commission as well. That really covered a lot of bases for me, just knowing that they've had some input. And I would suggest that anything that they brought up, go ahead and just make it a condition of the recommendation.
I make a recommendation that we approve this request of 20A. I can't even read this. It's a Z or ZOA on 2025 S001.
Okay. As drafted?
That's drafted.
Okay. All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. I was gonna have to say something more. No, it's okay. It was positive. Because when we had made the restrictions on the West Broadway Urban Village, you know, my only concern was that in the event there's a business model where somebody wants to do this, I just wanted to, you know, we were eliminating the possibility. And so I'm grateful that you're doing this. I mean, I appreciate the place that firearms play in lawful society. And so with the right restrictions, with the right governance, I'm glad that the city is making that a possibility. And I think that, that was a good thing. So that's all. All right. So from there, what do we have next? Let's see. I think that's it. So reports from commissioners, number 7. I know you wanted to say something.
Just got back, but I went to take my car to Mortec Auto Body Repair on Del Monte, which is not far away from the Seaside Market that we have seen in the past. Is hopefully something's going to happen with that. But I wanted you guys to be aware that you have a major problem with the seagulls because you can't hurt them. And they are nesting up on top of that building. So I know that we've put something forward and hopefully it's coming that this is going to get demolished, but the owner needs to do something so that those things aren't nesting up there. That way, when it does come through to go into a project, it can flow without having the marine sanctuary stepping in and becoming a big problem because of these birds. And not to mention the poor people that have I was standing there and I got hit. They just leave that building, and you're talking about an automobile shop that paints cars and stuff, but they can't even pull them out of their inside of their garage because they'll get plastered. So we've got a big problem in the city with this, and to me, we need to look at it. To hopefully do something to where, I mean, I used to shop at that market when I first got married, and that was a long, long time ago. That's how long it's been closed. So I would just like to see something done that the owner does so that if you'd like, take a walk down Del Monte, right where Ortec Auto Body is, and look at the ground. And you'll see what they're going, and this guy gets a power washer off and washes it, but it doesn't last a week. And it's just amazing.
Have you seen the downtown Pacific Grove, the gal that walks around with the hawk?
I wonder if that would be against the Marine Sanctuary.
I don't know, I imagine Pacific Grove, right on Lighthouse is in the Marines that real
But
close.
no,
but
I've
it was
seen-
interesting because it's a natural way of handling it.
Well, that's Falconers, all of them, you know, that. To me, there's gotta be something that, whether it's a big air horn, like a ship's horn on top of the building, that every once in a while could go off and they won't wanna stay there. Just something so that all the other businesses aren't affected because this building is sitting there dead. And these birds are using it as a nesting ground.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with this. I mean, even today I was doing a walk down Del Monte and I could see that a part of the road, it was just covered and I could see a whole bunch of birds and the roof of the building was white. And I actually, I can only describe it as feeling unsafe as I was walking through this area because even the parked cars had poop all over them. And this is right behind one of the auto dealers. So I'm definitely familiar with this. I've heard staff talking about this and I think there are conversations about getting consent agreements so that the city could put things on private property to try to, because they are protected. And that is what makes it very challenging. But there are also a lot of people that are really getting kind of fed up with the situation and moving them from, sometimes you can get them to go leave them one space, but then they just go somewhere else. And it is definitely a problem. I do not know whether or not it's on the radar about this particular location being an issue. Those are all great points. So let me check in with the city attorney and see, just make sure that this is at least on people's radar.
Yeah, I'm all for this Marine Sanctuary. I mean, I was a fisherman, I sold my boat when I saw it coming. But what I'm not is, I went to Fremont Junior High and we fought those things every day at lunchtime. If you were not paying attention, they'd swoop and take your sandwich right out of your head. But they would just litter on us constantly up there. But what I see over there on Del Monte is way worse. I mean, it looks like a whole army of seagulls.
Yeah.
And there has to come a time where when something is a health hazard, which this is, there's got to be something we can do about it. There's people that create the codes for the city to adopt.
I'm curious because I'm not as familiar with it, I think, as you are. Is this a problem along the whole of Del Monte, or is it just a part of it?
It's not just Seaside. Sad City has a huge problem that you saw on the news this year when they all hatched and they were falling off buildings. They're lucky and stuff. And people were running over that, the smaller signals. Only because they flew right down. It wasn't something intentional, but it is a problem that, granted, we have to protect certain things, but there comes a limit. When it becomes so intrusive that we need to do something about it. And this poor guy that's running this auto body shop here at Seaside, it's affecting his business big time. So to me, it's up to us to come up with some kind of code that protects them. Like you said, you walk there, but I just dropped my car off and I looked at the ground, I go, and I go, my God, what kind of army comes to, and no sooner as I said, wham, I just got hit right in the front. And it's like, well, God, if I'm just one customer that was there for a few minutes, think that people not only get come to do business there because of that. So I just thought that maybe there's something we could do, make some kind of a code that. Granted, they're first, but there's a trouble a lot of times when we protect something too much to become.
Something to be said for natural selection.
Well, I have seen businesses like, fast food places.
McDonald's.
The other one, In and out.
Yeah.
They've got things on the roof.
Yeah.
Trying to keep.
Unfortunately, I talked to this guy about that. He said, there's stuff on these roofs, they're not doing anything. The auto dealerships have done the roofs, and it's not working. So it creates, like I said, it's creating a huge issue for seaside business. And I just think it's something we should look at.
I have an item, unless we're not done.
No, that's fine. Go for it.
Yeah, good. I just have a request from our HOA for the ZA. This is the second notice of intent to approve that we've received in the last couple of months. And this one was dated June 13th. And it was received in our manager's office and date stamped June 20th. You know, and then by the time they get it to the right people, I got it today. It got approved yesterday. So on these kinds of things, it just helps us to be able to tell the people, remember, even if the city approves it, you've got to still go through the HOA to get it approved. And we've had this discussion in the past with the city, and on a ZA thing, if you could just give us a heads up right away, we would appreciate it. That's all.
Do you have a, because we do get the 10 days, like the clock doesn't start till it gets dropped off at the post office. But do you have like a phone number or an email or something that I can ask the planners to?
You just send it to me or Will.
We're both on the HOA board, but you're on the ARB, right? Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of those courtesies because, you know, people think they've invested all this time and effort going through you. And when it's a ZA one, you know, the clock's ticking right away. And if we're not getting this until the day after approval, we don't have a chance to say to them, hey, remember, just because you got an approval doesn't mean that.
Yeah, and generally, we're very favorable towards the improvements people want to make. We have a process, and, you know, when we apply it to one person, we have to apply it to everybody.
It seems strange. Didn't it get delivered until the 20th?
Well, by the time
there was,
it went to the HOA management company, and by the time they directed it to Dave.
Oh, because they're not local. So.
yeah, again,
Got it.
I don't know
Okay.
who it was addressed to because I don't have the envelope, but I'm just figuring since you're the ZA, maybe you could just know if it's in an HOA, just give us a heads up the moment the process starts. That way we can get to them, especially if it's something that we're likely not going to approve, then it just saves them a whole lot of time and effort. It's unlikely that we would, but we have had a couple where it's like, nope,
Okay.
not going to build the Taj Mahal.
I may ask you to submit a written request that you do that, for that, just, you know, because, you know, if people want special notices, we have to offer it to everyone, which means we need to create a list of entities to get special notices and under what circumstances, which doesn't seem unreasonable.
Well, my guess is
Yeah.
that what it does is because within the 300-foot list or whatever, our common areas are in that. So it gets sent to the HOA management company. But I know that if the city's willing to just give us the courtesy, we can just get it
Yeah.
to the board. That's tremendous.
Yeah, that seems fine. And also, I mean, talk to your residents, because was this the one where they wanted to legalize that deck that encroached into the setback?
Pacific Crest,
5041?
4 foot, 7 feet, inches into the
Yeah.
setback.
I did have one of the neighbors in the office the other day asking questions about that.
Good.
So, but
See, but that might not hit the board until our monthly meeting. So
Yeah.
the timing is, I'm just asking for the courtesy of just a courtesy notification so that we can jump on it right away with the owner. It just makes it easier for you and for us.
okay.
And I actually thought you were going to get to this one, but I just want to say attaboy. You know, thank you for the lovely sidewalk and crosswalk entrance that you guys are putting in at the Monterey Road entrance to Seaside High School. It was long overdue, and when I saw it happening, I sent Commissioner Evans a note, and I said, all your griping is paid off. It's you were persistent and but it's really well needed considering the volume of students that come down that path to go over to, you know, to the shopping complex. So it looks great. And I mean, you even went above and beyond by putting the stone on it to make it look like the other side. Yeah, that's just great. Awesome.
Well,
That just brought another question to mind, and that is, recently we've had these sort of modified, I guess you would call them speed bumps, but they're not as high as most speed bumps, placed on Hilby. Are there plans to do that with any of the other crosstown streets?
do not know. I can ask Public Works.
Okay.
You're asking specifically whether that style of speed bump is going to be used elsewhere, or?
I mean, until they start turning up the road, and then I thought they were just going to be repaving, but it turned out they're putting in speed bumps that would at least slow people down a little bit. That's been a problem with Hilby. It's a pretty narrow road to start with, and people go way too fast for that road. And that just brought to mind, well, is this something that they're going to try to do in other places in the city where there may be similar problems? You know, the logical places would be roads like Hilby that are across town and don't have signals a lot of the way. So people can, you know, get up a good head of speed before having to stop. Like Kimball's an excellent example.
I believe they're already finished the ones that, you know,
So Kimball will be next.
I don't know. Yeah, so either.
Yeah, I mean, I know Broadway has, Upper Broadway, there's a plans for putting in several roundabouts. Due to some traffic calming, as part of a Complete Streets project. I couldn't tell you about Kimball. Yeah,
I talked with the fire and it has a lot to do if that's a route for the fire trucks. If it's a route for the fire trucks, they're not gonna put speed bumps. So. Cause I've asked for it on our street, cause they're not, cause the way people just fly down, and I'm gonna go to the council and ask that they do something for people that don't have driveway encroachments off of the Yosemite. Cause cars are coming through there so quick, it just wipes your car out trying to back out quick because there's no drop down.
One thought would be maybe to put rumble strips in, because rumble strips alert people without having the impact to the fire engines.
I talked to the chief even about putting one of those things that show your speed. And he says the trouble with those, they want to see council give them the right to put a camera on it. Because kids try to see how fast they can make them trigger. And so it becomes more dangerous by putting it in certain areas.
that's why it just says slow down instead of like just posting the speed. Because people are trying to get high scores. Okay.
Well, you know, human nature is that way. I heard a story years ago, there was a hotel that was literally on the ocean, right? It was on the water of a particular bay, and the dining room on the ground floor had these big plate glass windows, and they always got broke. They got broken because people were casting, you know, their lead sinkers off of the balconies up above to fish, and they actually were successful in eliminating the problem when they took the signs off of the balcony saying, please don't fish from your balcony, because they gave everybody an idea. All right, any other reports from commissioners? How about reports from staff?
None.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.